Hello, I'm Alex, Head of Solutions Architecture at DBOS. Today I'm excited to talk to Chris Chan, the co-founder and CTO of Riviera, the AI revenue system for elective healthcare. Chris happens to be a veteran of multiple startups and also has over a decade of experience as a technology leader at Goldman Sachs. Over the past several months, Chris and team have been building Riviera using DBOS, and I'm excited to hear about the experience so far. So without further ado, Chris, would you like to introduce yourself and talk about Riviera?
Yeah, Alex, thanks for having me here. Yeah, as Alex mentioned, co-founder and CTO of Riviera. I started Riviera back actually January 1st of this year, 2026, with four other co-founders. We're now currently a team of 11. All folks that we've all worked together in various jobs in the past. So it's been a bit of a reunion in some ways for us. But yeah, just to talk a bit more about Riviera, or just give a high level, Riviera, we help elective healthcare practices like cosmetic plastic surgery and dermatology. So they're small businesses, right? Usually a single surgeon with a handful of admin staff. But what makes our customers really interesting is that they're almost like managing mid-market sales cycles, right? So these our customers, they are selling effectively sometimes six-figure procedures that the surgeons perform. So what Riviera does is that we help these practices capture and manage the revenue life cycles for for these SMBs. So how do we actually do that? On the surface, our Riviera's core offering is like a CRM, but really designed for consumer instead of B2B. Now that's in some ways kind of unique, right? I think most CRMs are designed for companies and deals, where really we're centered around consumers that might engage with the practice, but no one's signing up for surgery on a Friday and showing up on a Sunday, right? Oftentimes these are life-changing procedures that can take weeks, oftentimes months for you to finally decide and pull the trigger on. So on the surface, we are a CRM that helps, that's designed for consumer and also helps practices replace like a dozen other different systems that they oftentimes have to cobble together. So what are those, right? First off, it's like a unified inbox, right, across email, SMS, social media. We've also offer a fully integrated phone system, effectively like to replace their practice's phone system. That supports both digital as well as physical phones. We also support video, in-person meetings, in-person recordings. So I think in the healthcare space, it's like having a digital scribe. That's what they call it. Right? And also email, SMS marketing, right? Consumer side, lots of marketing, marketing campaigns that they sent out. And just to wrap that up, also lead capture forms. So rather than having to set up their own jot form or type form, we have that in-house. Patient scheduling, and soon we'll start to introduce some EMR integrations for some of the so that once that full life cycle completes, that information where the lead starts to become a patient, that goes into the EMR system as well. Now, I think why our customers have really gravitated towards Riviera and what I think we do differently than most other providers out there is that we really work closely with our customers to automate away a lot of their busy work and really design the platform or customize the platform around their needs. So really our goal is so that their staff can spend less time, ultimately to spend less time on the actual software and more time, talking to leads, talking to patients, right? And over time, we could prove that, through all the fun automations we're providing, we can actually drive higher conversion rates and higher revenue for our customers. So I'll give an example of that. So, just as one simple example, just to illustrate how manual practices, these small businesses can be. Some of our practices used to, these healthcare practices. Sorry, taking one step back, in healthcare, we oftentimes call in, right? Like you might email a doctor, but it's way more common just to call, right?
Yeah.
And so, for some of our practices, they actually contract with, like a third-party answering service. So when a customer, a patient or a lead calls in to their main line, they're actually talking to a call center rather than someone that's working at the actual practice. And that's actually really common across healthcare. And of course, that person at the call center takes notes. Then, this is where the chain starts to devolve. This call center takes notes. They email the note to a doctor. The doctor then forwards it to their staff member. The staff member looks up, like that person on in their CRM and tries to deduplicate and adds notes, and then tries to frantically set up schedules. Like it's like that's the traditional.
And this happens
workflow.
across 5 time zones, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. And this story just is repeated over and over again across so many different touch points for practices. But just to finish this illustration with Riviera, we instead can just send callers to a friendly voice agent, right? That's built in our phone system. And that voice agent, it's good at not only selling the practice, like or explaining to potential leads, not patients, about to learn more about the doctor. It can even like help schedule an appointment for you, and and of course all that information just gets automatically plumbed into the system. We get on, that lead or patient just automatically gets if it's a brand new lead, gets automatically enrolled in our marketing and lead nurture campaigns. Or if it's an existing lead or existing patient, that triggers follow-ups to the specific staff members and then they can go and call back through our system. So yeah, that's just like one example, but overall, like we've been building this since Jan 1st. We have a dozen customers on board, and like just getting really good feedback. And of course, we are heavy users of DBOS, and we use DBOS across a number of services in Riviera, and happy to speak more about that.
That sounds great. Yeah, great segue. My next question was going to be, what do you use DBOS for, and what do your workflows do for you?
Yeah, so we use DBOS like all over the place, but I can maybe like talk a bit more about our stack. Like we're heavy serverless compute users, right? Our entire platform's on GCP, but just describing some of the features that we have, right? Like even something like a lead capture form, like that, in making sure that transactions complete. Like there's just so many little areas where it's nice to have some sort of some kind of fallback. That I would say that's the basic level. I think at another level, like campaign automations, like email campaign automations, right? Being able to enroll a lead into a series of emails. Now, you could design in so many ways. I think we've just decided to throw it into a DBOS workflow, and allows it to sort of schedule over the course of several days. I think where we use DBOS probably the most like mission like critical, I would say, like, or sorry, I guess they're all critical, but it's the most like performance intensive is actually within our phone system. So like we use DBOS pretty heavily in a phone system. Like phone systems are a synchronous communication protocol, right? So most of everything else we do is async. So with synchronous, right, there's a lot of just race conditions that happen, like timing and things that require like lots of asynchronous things need to happen all at once so that two calls can happen synchronously. And we are heavy, that workflow is we heavily use DBOS to basically protect against specific failures, because imagine having a phone system that also is in a serverless compute, like that can potentially be a recipe for disaster. And we found that with DBOS, it just adds a little bit of like, I guess, a little bit of safety, I suppose, so that obviously, like if everything goes down in the middle of a connection, of call connection, that call's not going to get connected. But a call's can last 20, 30 hours at a time, right? And so even if the service goes down and restarts, like that call state can continue. So the calls, obviously, like they're connected directly through WebRTC, its own sort of protocol, but like maintaining the state of that call, we use DBOS pretty heavily for that.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And is it fair to say that part of the complexity has to do with managing these disparate systems, from the campaigns to the phones to the database of users? Just is it difficult to synchronize across them, and Is DBOS part of that as well?
It's not so much synchronized between the systems. So each system is its own stack, right? In its own sort of serverless or in its own service, effectively. Where we do have some synchronization, it's less. Sorry, within a service, DBOS is really just to protect when it allows us to have a serverless architecture. I think that's really right. So like that we can feel comfortable, continuously deploying in the middle of the day and still be okay with, phone systems staying up, and or emails being sent, marketing campaigns that are multi-day, continuing to live through that restart cycle. I would say where DBOS helps, like between services, is what we've seen is, well, I guess DBOS just adds a layer of like protection, but like if you think about a CRM, right? Like a CRM, the state of the CRM changes when like conversations happen, right? Like an email comes through, an SMS comes through, whatever, right? And I guess the other state change is just time. Like time has elapsed, so things happen. But those two are like the state event changes, and so we do have like an event-driven system that basically like every time like the state of a customer's CRM changes, and that those state changes, those events are propagated across all the different services. We do also wrap that in like what happens after that, right? Like the actions that happen after that in itself in a workflow. But yeah, and of course like I need like our LLM based, like I mean. I hate to use the word AI, but it's like, like LLMs, generative, all these models that are out there that obviously it is nice to oftentimes put some of those steps in a workflow as well.
Got it. And so take me back to January or maybe February. You're building, and how did the path to choosing DBOS evolve? Did you always know you were going to need durable execution? Did you use durable execution before? And at what point did you decide to like add DBOS to your stack?
Yeah, great question. I think I have used Temporal in the past. I would say not a heavy user, but this is more actually for my own side projects. But yeah, I think just the evolution of it came from we actually started out in a stateful server, so like an actual like compute. We just instantiated a VM, right? And I would say that the first sort of inclination that we needed durable execution, moving from that like stateful server to a like serverless architecture or serverful. Sorry, what is the opposite of serverless? Anyways, a regular server architecture to a serverless architecture, right? And obviously needing some way to retry when things fail, right? And that was I would say like the first. Okay, yes, we need some system that be it like a durable execution or just our own homegrown thing that like saves state somewhere, right? Like I think when you have like either you write things that just retry on its own or and are idempotent on its own, or you kind of use a temporal or a DBOS like solution around that. So I think that's where where the need for something like this came about.
Okay, and then once you saw the need, how did you first hear about DBOS, and how did you decide that was the thing to use?
Yeah, this seems like so long ago, but it was only a few months ago. But yeah, we asked ChatGPT. Actually, I don't know if it's true. No, I want to take that back. I think we asked Claude. So yeah, this is what Opus 4.5 at that time, or yes, yeah, we so look, we knew, I would say, actually, okay, I'm just trying to think back to a few months ago, which, yes, it actually stemmed from, we were starting to write LLM-based workflows, so various kinds of LLM workflows. And we were actually looking not just for durable execution, but also for a like like an orchestrator, like an LLM orchestrator, to be able to piece together various, steps of our workflows, of our AI workflows. And we actually did a bake-off between DBOS and I want to say there's like a platform called Mastra. It's a TypeScript, kind of like Langsmith, LangGraph kind of competitor, but in in TypeScript.
Yeah.
And I think it was at that point where, and I think Mastra had some like not truly durable, but like replayable, retriable logic, right, for failure. Yeah, I think we just, I liked the simplicity of it at that time. Yeah, so I think that's. I'm just trying to think of why else, or where did that come from? But yeah, it was during that bake off. We asked Claude, do research on, hey, tell like what's the what are all of Mastra's competitive competitors out there, and of course like I knew about Temporal, but Temporal is it's a lot to onboard, and so I didn't necessarily want to commit our team to rewriting a lot of the business logic in a temporal friendly fashion, and so I also consulted our coding agents to get a sense for all these different platforms, and I think that's where we discovered DBOS.
Excellent. Yeah, that simplicity, that S word, that often is what we hear. So that sounds right. That's often why people go with us. What about like?
There's actually one more concept. I feel really increasingly strongly about this, and which is that like I think especially in this world of like coding agents and whatnot, I feel like I guess I'll put like the Lang ecosystem on the table. But like any of those like platforms that have like DSLs, like some domain specific language where it's trying to like abstract things to make it easier for humans to understand. I fundamentally believe that that's like not nearly as useful in the world of coding agents. Like I just need coding agents to understand the code, right? I don't obviously we're doing some code reviews, but like we are like a very AI heavy shop, and we're not looking at every line of everything that's being written. I don't want to have to build like for me to being able to use platforms where I can just read the coding language and understand it because I understand TypeScript, I understand Python, and I don't need to also become an expert in another domain language. I think was also a very big selling point for us. That like with Mastra and Lang, like those you had to basically onboard to another language just to be able to understand the code, and we didn't really want to deal with that given our heavy use of coding agents.
And what about DBOS is obviously it requires Postgres, and were you guys using Postgres already, and was that a factor in the decision?
We were using Postgres, so it fit very neatly into that architecture.
Got it. All right, and so you made this decision, and what happened then? How did onboarding actually look like once you said, okay, we're gonna bring on DBOS? Then what, right?
Yeah, and I can share some. I don't know if these are funny stories or not, but yeah, I think DBOS is almost like deceptively simple. Like we're like, wow, okay, you could just wrap things in a workflow and steps, and it just magically, supposedly magically works. And this is very early on in our journey as a company, and we were just wrapping everything in DBOS workflows. We're like, holy smokes, like this is basically free. We're getting, and we didn't really pay attention to a few things. I think this is also just from us moving quickly and not reading the fine print. But I would say first we didn't pay close attention to versioning. And so I think if we had actually looked at the conductor and what was happening, we were just throwing a bunch of things that weren't actually going to be rerun. Which is fine at that point. We were just early. We didn't have customers like month one, so it wasn't a big deal. I think also once we did start onboarding customers, we quickly realized that just due to the pricing model for Conductor, it probably didn't make sense to put everything as a Conductor step, and we were doing some things probably a little bit inefficiently. I think at some point we had because DBOS has like a cron scheduler, right? Like equivalent of a cron scheduler. So we have this like DBOS workflow schedule like every 4 seconds, across like it just yeah. So I think I think the first time we met was probably when, we got that first bill. It's like, wait, we have like 2 customers on board. How did this get to? How did this monthly charge grow so quickly? And I was like, I swear we're totally using this. And I think that was really just on us. We misunderstood. We were not reading, the best use cases or the best way to use DBOS. So yeah, we went back and obviously re-architected the code in a way that like still basically just being more intentional about like the steps that we actually wanted to be durable, as opposed to just lazily throwing everything into a wrapper.
And did that also affect your Postgres storage? Like, were you generating a lot of data in your database at the same time? Was that a concern at all?
I mean, we did not generate nearly enough for that to be a concern, I would say. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think,
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think the latencies that we were playing around with weren't it didn't make a difference.
And from a technical perspective, what would you say was the most sort of unexpected finding? Was it the versioning and sort of getting around how that works?
Yeah, the versioning, I think it took a little bit, and this is maybe like a feature request, but I think we had to train our agents our agents to understand when to increase the version and when not to, and also train our code reviewers. So we had to basically give it very specific instructions on how to do that. And it's still, I think even our automated code reviewers still get it wrong. So it'd be nice to I don't know, just have a prompt we can throw into a reviewer, and that's how it knows to look at to tell us if we've correctly or incorrectly changed or not changed our DBOS versioning. But sorry, that's just a quick side request. We've already kind of got it mostly working, but I think it's not perfect. But yeah, versioning was a little bit of a just understanding the versioning model. We just had to sit down with the documentation. It's not too crazy. I think it's also understanding. Let's see here. Yeah, just understanding maybe like a bit more of the conductor model. Again, like these are things that I think once we read the docs in more detail and actually saw how it worked, and mapping like, okay, like what's the mental model for a conductor to map to each of our like services, right? And figuring out that mapping, I think and that's obviously tied to versioning, and that actually like worked. We didn't have to like re-architect anything. It mapped pretty well to our architecture, but yeah, it just required a little bit of reading and thinking.
Interesting. And on the versioning side, have you looked at patching at all, or maybe it was released after you really had a chance to, after you've built up enough on versioning?
Yeah,
it was added more recently.
I don't think we've really like changed how it's worked since April. I would say we're just adding more workflows, but not changing how we're using DBOS.
Yeah. Patching may be an option to look into there. Right? There's a doc on it now, right next to the versioning doc. How do you deploy updates? Do you do live blue-green deployments?
Yeah, just live. Our stacks and our serverless runs on the Cloud Run on GCP, and so it sort of starts up the next, and then make sure it's green, and then flips the switch over.
Got it. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. And so, as you're continuing to build, what's next on your roadmap, and what are sort of your next technical challenges as you see them?
Yeah. So I think a few, or not just a few, uh, are, I feel like we're only scratching the surface in terms of like how deeply we can like kind of use all the information that's being collected in Riviera and use our like deep understanding of our customers to really like help them like just like build, like ultimately like move away from their old way of doing things
Hmm.
to starting to trust. Okay, actually we can trust trust the machine to go and send this email on your behalf, and trust your and so some of that is a kind of like a user training design trust based problem. So like we can
Mm.
apply our insights and what we've collected to start to build out workflows, and oftentimes a human in the loop initially, and then eventually like have staff say, "Yeah, actually we're okay with the agents doing this on our behalf." I think that's one major area, and of course like just as part of that, it requires building much more like agentic type workflows and orchestration, and we and scheduling things that these workflows that can last potentially multiple days. um, I think
Yeah,
that's
let's drill down on that actually. Like, what do you do to increase that trust, right? How do you make the human trust the machine, right?
yeah
In 5 minutes or less, if you can, right now. I realize it's a tough question, but perhaps you have an opinion.
yeah I mean, first I think you focus on the things that your customers don't want to do, right? Like they're just like they're just so happy for you to give them a button to try to do some of it. So an example of that is sending email replies, like a lot of email or text message replies. A lot of our staff, our customer staff are, that's like a good chunk of their job, but like half the time these emails are it's the same they could almost be templates practically, right? And so I think there is like this natural transition starting from, okay, like let's have a button or have like a few pre-selected options. Okay, great. Maybe start to add a little glitter button that, like that glitter, now the common
Hmm.
icon that lets you kind of auto write, right? And so once you start to move from, okay, I trust like the thing to auto write and then for me to send, it's not hard to just have it pre-populated with the response and just, and eventually just, hey, by the way, we've sent this to you. So I think it's like, I don't think there's any way around like just doing the reps too of okay,
Hmm.
let's make sure that whatever our LLMs are spitting out, like we fine-tune the prompts, to the degree that actually practice, like our staff members are going to say, yes, that's exactly the message I would have sent, right? And you start collecting that information, building that trust, and then eventually once your model, once you've gotten enough sends without edits, I think that's where you transition to more fully automated.
Mm.
So
Got it.
I don't
Got
know.
it.
I don't know if it's not necessarily technical in nature. I think it's just time and
Gradual.
yeah, yeah. I actually just a quick anecdote, like a side note. It's like I spent most of my career at Goldman Sachs, as you introduced me, and so when I joined GS back in like 2008,
Mm.
I joined I joined the trading desk like I think 2 weeks after Lehman Brothers hit, so that was fun.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yeah,
Oh
but
my
I was
goodness.
a measly analyst, so kept I still had a job because just an analyst. But anyways, but my time there, I oftentimes think how funny it is that like when I first started in we were still trading off of spreadsheets at times. Not everything.
Mm.
I think equities had been automated, but like a lot of the things that we were trading in the um, in the space that I spent most of my career, like it started very manual. But of course, like the march of technology, especially in finance, was very like had a huge push towards automation early on. And so increasingly more and more became automated to the point where by the time I left, like 80% of the tickets were being automatically traded. And that took 12 years, like a 12-year transition from spreadsheet trading to, to fully, 80% automation for all the small tickets. And
how many of those had human in the loop, actually?
100% of those, actually, practically. Maybe not the 80%, but human loop, human oversight. Maybe not human to approve, because obviously you can't approve every trade at that speed. But there's always a human watching, right? And I think it really just goes back to like, what's the risk? What's the downside risk? Right? I think that's like another like factor in this, which is like when, the downside of me making a wrong trade in a trading book could mean losing millions of dollars, right? But the downside of like a typo or accidentally sending the wrong text message is not that big of a deal,
Right.
You'll recover. So I think there is that is actually probably the most critical aspect for things that are not that important. I think a lot of practices are already doing some automation, right? And so. Yeah, I think where it's going to take even more time will be in the more critical parts. Like, for example, like when you're starting to, when a lead is further down the funnel and you really need like a more personalized touch, right? Yeah, and you're deep in that in that conversation. So, yeah, I think that will take time, but probably not 12 years.
Hopefully not. Well, yeah. It's not just moving. It's not just increasing in degree. It's accelerating, right? Like coding is just happens much faster now. It's a lot faster to determine if you need DBOS. It's a lot faster to put something together with DBOS. It's really something.
The thing we have today that wasn't possible before, transformer architecture, right? It was like just the ability to put reasoning in on your computer, like human reasoning. Like I feel like with neural networks, this is back in like 2005, I was like working at Livermore Labs, and like the summer project I had at the point was some Stanford professor had, I don't know, spent this probably got him in the professorship, but he came up with a very nice like model to fit multivariate splines that had nice properties around convergence and avoiding local minima and okay, whatever, but a nice sophisticated model that took a lot of like mathematical know-how. And the project of the summer is like, hey, if you were to build a neural network from scratch, back then it was like you're still writing in C++, but it's like you're building that from scratch, like can you reach a similar level of performance as this fancy spline fitter? And of course the answer is yes. Like I feel like the answer is always yes, and that like with enough finagling and model architecture, you find that like you can map almost like most like transformations and processes, and I think anyways, like so zooming forward to today, it's like like there's just the fact that we can map human reason, or sorry, I guess that's map next token prediction, and
right,
and which gives a the feeling, the illusion of reasoning, or certainly I think coding agents, they do seem quite reasonable, and I think that's just something that is it's just going to keep accelerating. Like I think if we had that technology in 2008 back at GS, it wouldn't have taken 12 years to automate things. I think we would have gone there much faster.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get back to feature requests. You mentioned you have feature requests for us. Do you have more? What can we add to DBOS to make things better?
I think the number one feature request is to, I don't know if you guys are doing this already, but like, making sure the latest, coding agent models know DBOS deeply. Like that's, we do use context 7 at times to supplement for documentation, but ideally, like, right, what versions are we at right now? It's like what, GPT 5.5 or Codex 5.5 and Opus 4.8, like, and yeah, like those versions, ideally those versions like understand the architecture deeply.
And have you used our agent skills repo, DBOS-Inc. /agent skills?
I want to say by the time we figured out how to use DBOS, we were ready. It was after we discovered the agent skills after the fact. I think agent skills are like, generally, I think agent skills are helpful, but like I would say agent skills themselves need maintenance. So not
Yes.
every team updates their agent skills, and then 3 months later they're like, wait, like you're actually 5 versions behind. But we do try to proactively update on a weekly basis, and but yeah, I think nothing actually beats like the model itself having seen reps and and whatnot.
So it seems that we just need to put more and more DBOS code into the training data somehow.
Hey, at some point, I don't know, these open AI might, open up some fire hose for folks to who knows? I don't know, like to just feed them information or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these AI companies are going to need to compete with, or the frontier companies are going to need to compete with Google, and they're going to need some way to provide or incentivize companies to provide structured training data for their agents. Like they're going to need.
Very interesting take. Yeah.
That's my hot take. It's yeah. Google obviously, like, like they established the precedents, right, with like structured markup and all the schema, JSON, LD metadata. But I imagine coding, maybe the open AIs of the world might want to offer another solution for that.
And what about the conductor MCP? Do you guys use that?
Yeah, great question. To be honest, I think when we tried to use it, we couldn't get it to connect. But this is like, probably eight weeks ago. So yeah, I think for the most part, I don't know if for better or for worse, it's DBOS has just worked. Feel free to quote that. I know it just we do run like syncs just to check our, not DBOS, but just to check our own internal consistency, and we're deploying and restarting servers throughout the day. Like we haven't seen anything drop, so it's surprisingly just worked. We haven't had to. I suppose we would go to Conductor if we want to force restart specific workflows and that were stuck, and we haven't had to do that so far. I think we're mindful of like pushing those kinds of workflows like in off hours.
That's good to hear. Well, all right, Chris, thanks so much for your time. It was great chatting with you. Just a couple of final questions before we wrap up. One is, I always like to ask this, how would you describe DBOS to someone else, like another engineer?
It honestly feels like core art, like infrastructure at this point. Like I think it's I really do mean that. It is at that layer. It's at a low enough layer, but serves like an important enough need that it feels like core infrastructure to consider. That's like, and then for folks that have used Temporal, it's like, oh, it's like Temporal, but you can just write in standard functions and not the temporal method of writing things. Like, so I think, but yeah, it feels like I almost feel like it should be part of like a standard package, like a. I come from the Python world. I'm thinking, yeah, it should be like a Python standard package, like standard library, right? Just okay, import DBOS, like and just yeah. Well, you're gonna change your charge model, your pricing model to maybe be more open source friendly, but
Excellent.
but it really does feel like that kind of
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, I don't yeah. So far, it's just worked. I really so kudos to your team.
Thank you very much. And finally, where can people find you online or get in touch with you?
Yeah. So Riviera, we are at runriviera.com, RUNRIVIERA.com. And my name
Thanks
is
so much,
Chris.
Chris.
Look up Chris Chan at Riviera. There's probably a few other Chris Chans, but I'm the one over at Riviera.